This Honourable House is now in Standing Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Head 93, Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance in the amount of $95,310,945.
Mr. Chairman, I now seek the leave of Parliament for members of the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance and associated SOEs to join me in the well of Parliament.
You may proceed, Minister. Good morning, Honourable members of the House. Good morning to the team from the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. Please listen carefully as I give the instruction for these proceedings. Honourable members, do not distract the chair. Let me therefore explain to the officers of the Ministry of Housing. The Minister is well aware of the procedure. You have time to do your opening statement. This will be followed equal time by the Leader of the Opposition. Then we will go to the floor of the House, where persons, honorable members, have the opportunity to ask their question. Now, according to Standing Order 67, Note 3, questions to the minister should not exceed 3 minutes. You are permitted to do a preamble not definitely in excess of 3 minutes. If you utilize your 3 minutes, then you will have to wait your turn to get in the question. So please ask the question as opposed to utilizing your 3 minutes, because you can have that for a statement, but you cannot do the 3 minutes and then pose a question too. It's either one or the next, or part of one and part of the next. Simply meaning that if you take 2 minutes to do your preamble, you will have a minute for the question. And this question that you ask, you allow 3 supplementary questions, 3 questions connected to the first question that you would have posed to the minister. Am I clear on that? Members of the team from the Ministry of Housing, in your response, if you are so directed by the minister, he has that that authority to so direct any member of his team to answer any particular question. You are allowed 3 minutes in doing so. You should also, before you begin to speak, state your name and the position which you hold within the ministry for the purpose of Hansard recordings. Minister, you have, in response to any question, you have 5 minutes to answer any question which is posed to you, and I will indicate when you are getting close to that 5-minute time. So we will now proceed under this head. Honourable Minister, you may give your opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A pleasant morning to all those gathered in the chamber. Honourable members of Parliament. Mr. Chairman and members of Parliament, I'm very thankful for the opportunity this morning to present to this Honourable House the estimates for the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance for the financial year 2025 to 2026. And in so doing, to highlight the achievements during the financial year 2024-2025 and outline to you our plans and strategic direction for the upcoming financial year. Before I go any further, allow me to extend my gratitude to my entire team of my ministry, which also extends to those statutory agencies under the purview of the ministry, for their diligence and hard work during the course of the current financial year as we work together to meet the demands of our citizens for the provision of affordable housing. Let me pause at this time and introduce the team to the chamber. To my left is Mr. Nicky Smith, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. To my right is the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, Mrs. Suzette Edibab. Behind Mrs. Edibab is the Chairman of HOPE, Mr. Colin Scaife. Next to Mr. Scaife is the Deputy Property Manager, the Deputy Chief Property Manager, Mr. Brian Hines. And next to him is the Acting Chief Property Manager, Mr. Dexter Montesir. Behind Mr. Montesir is the Chief Housing Planner, Mrs. Nicole Johnson. To her right is the Registrar of Titles with the Land Registry, Mrs. Michelle Johnson. And to Mrs. Johnson right is the Chairman of National Housing Corporation, Mr. Morton Holder. Directly behind Mr. Morton Holder is Mr. Ian Gill, General Manager of the National Housing Corporation. To his immediate left is Mrs. Henrietta Bourne Ford, Chief Legal Officer of the National Housing Corporation. And to her left is Mr. Kevin Belgrave, Senior Land Surveyor within the Lands and Surveys Department. Let me apologize for the absence of Mr. David McCollin, the Chief Land Surveyor. It is unavoidable that he's not here this morning, but he sent his regards. We recognize as I carry on, that housing is not merely about a structure of bricks and mortar. It is the foundation of strong communities, economic stability, security, social well-being, and prosperity for all citizens. This has been well articulated in our 2016 Covenant of Hope and our 2018 Barbados Labour Party Manifesto. It is with this in mind that we in the ministry have given our commitment to come into work every day to do right by the citizens of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance is comprised of 8 sections and departments and 2 state-owned enterprises, one being a commercial state-owned enterprise, that being Hope. I will list the departments: general management and coordination, including admin accounts, the registry, the MIS system personnel, and the HIV/AIDS prevention care and support program that has 28 staff members. The housing planning unit, 9 staff members. The property management unit, 10 technical staff members and 4 general workers. A legal unit, I spoke of the land registry department, 31 staff members. Land adjudication department, 15 staff members. Lands and surveys, 31 staff members. And the maintenance unit residing in the property management of 78 staff members. And bringing up the rear, but by no means least, I have the National Housing Corporation and Hope Ownership Providing Energy, the 2 state-owned enterprises. This year estimates, Mr. Chairman, will see the ministry receiving a total budgetary allocation of $108.7 million, of which $11.4 million will be statutory expenditure, that being personal emoluments, with the non-statutory allocation being a total of $97.3 million. This allocation, however, does not include Hope Ownership Providing Energy, Hope Inc. I will repeat that. The allocation in the budget does not include Hope Inc. The largest portion of these funds will be allocated to the property management unit, which will be receiving some $67.1 million, or 70% of the non-statutory allocation, of which $50 million will be for rental of property for the provision of office accommodation for government entities, state-owned enterprises, and regional and international agencies. The property management unit is responsible for managing a total of 59 leases related to rental of commercial office accommodation from private sector and the National Insurance Board at an annual cost of $66.3 million. In light of these high annual rental payments, a consultation was held with the ministry's private landlords on Monday, June the 10th, 2024, to highlight the challenges and the fact that such payments are not financially sustainable. At the conclusion, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, the landlords were encouraged to partner with government by utilizing a build, operate, transfer, and lease modality known as a BOLT arrangement for the provision of public service accommodation in the immediate future. We'll hear more of that later during our presentation. I acknowledge that while our housing program is founded on strong intentions, it is not without its challenges. We recognize the issues of inefficiencies and inadequate planning in some initiatives, challenges that we have confronted and continue to address with humility and a steadfast commitment to improvement. Our government understands that our housing framework must evolve to meet the increasing demands placed upon it, even as we navigate external obstacles beyond our control. I'm fully aware that in recent months, my ministry would have been the subject of some scrutiny and criticism. We understand the frustrations of those who feel that progress has not been as fast as they would like, or that our policies have not met their expectations. As a government that values transparency and accountability, we welcome these discussions as they offer an opportunity for us to improve, innovate, and serve our citizens more effectively. Let me assure this Honourable House and the citizens we serve that we have listened, we have learned, and we are committed to doing better. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I now move to the achievements of the ministry. Despite the many challenges faced, my ministry has made significant strides in fulfilling its mandate. Allow me to highlight some of our notable achievements. We are well on the way to facilitating the transformation of land transaction process in Barbados. This is a major initiative being addressed by my ministry that involves the deconstructing and reconstructing of processes associated with land transactions in Barbados. This has emanated from concerns expressed regarding the inordinate length of time taken to complete real estate transactions in this country compared with other jurisdictions. And I must add, the inordinate length of time it takes to convey land and the inordinate length of time it takes for one to own a home in this country. Barbados would be better placed to attract both local and foreign investors, boost property values, and increase tax revenues, not to mention the benefits that could derive by making land more readily accessible for essential products in a timely manner. The ministry subsequently hosted 2 colloquiums during the current financial year, the first being held in October 2024, and the second on February 26, 2025. These colloquiums, both of which were chaired by none other than our Prime Minister, brought together all relevant stakeholders from both the public and private sectors to brainstorm and to come up with solutions on how best to streamline the processes, including through technological advancement such as e-conveyancing. And that is the ultimate objective of these colloquiums, to get to e-conveyancing. And indeed, we are on our way. Issues addressed emanating from the colloquium include the movement towards full registration of the entire island within a 3-year period, the identification of mechanisms for sharing of information across departments, the amendment of pieces of legislation affecting commerce and those perceived to be a public mischief to be facilitated. Ladies and gentlemen, this was not done only by the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. The Ministry of MIS, Barbados Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Infrastructure, Planning and Development, the private sector, the Bankers Association, the insurance associations, they were all part of this colloquium. The silent housing revolution is no longer silent. At the start of our second term in office in 2022, my government would have given its commitment to pursuing one of the most ambitious initiatives in the history of housing in this country, dubbed the Silent Revolution. This initiative, which caters to all economic classes, is aimed at driving down the cost of land and housing for ordinary Barbadians, ensuring the efficient utilization of vacant service lots, in addition to addressing unplanned ad hoc development and squatting. These homes will be constructed by both the public and private sector, with public-private partnership also being pursued to achieve our overall aim of housing every last person. Between the period 2022 to present, a total of 1,554 housing solutions were provided. And when you translate this into households, that is at least 5,000 persons being housed. Of these houses built, 1,205 were provided by the public sector, while the private sector accounted for a minimum of 349. Preliminary results for the financial year 2024 and 2025 indicate that some 275 housing solutions have been provided to date. We know of the East-West project. This East-West project was the victim of criticism, public criticism. When I went to Haggett Hall 2 years ago, we had only 30 houses built. Today, I'm proud to report that we have built 117 houses of the 150 housing solutions to be completed. These houses have been built at Bullen, St. James, Sergeant Village, Christchurch, and River Crescent in St. Philip. The remaining 33 units will be constructed at Dawes North and will be offered for sale through the National Housing Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, Hope Ownership Providing Energy. This has become the agency responsible for constructing houses on behalf of the government. This agency has a number of projects on the way that will be presented later in our presentation. But ladies and gentlemen, permit me to spend a little time discussing Hope Ownership Providing Energy. On July the 2nd, 2021, Hurricane Elsa struck this country, further exacerbating the vulnerabilities in our housing stock, an issue already compounded by a series of crises. These included the devastating freak storm in June 17 of 2021 and the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano on April 9, 2021 in our neighboring island of St. Vincent. More recently, in May 2024, one of the most extensive fires in our country's history ravaged the densely populated Wellington Street area, destroying or damaging a dozen homes and displacing 45 people, including 14 children and infants. Why started there, Mr. Speaker? Because accepting it is not business as usual at Hope, this government took a hands-on approach in late 2023 and appointed a CEO from a construction and development background with over 70 years of experience between. It was also recognized in early 2024 that Hope operating costs were too high. And during the second half of 2024, after careful consultation with the Hope Board, serious reduction in operating costs by the tune of $900,000 per annum was achieved. And this was achieved primarily by the relocation of offices and indeed the reduction of staff that was done smoothly. Indeed, with the introduction of technology and streamlined processes, operation efficiencies have increased tremendously. Hope has introduced construction development software, which has aided and continues to aid in planning and managing current and future development projects, and also employed an assistant development director to assist with the planning and execution of future projects. Hope has created its own mortgage certificates and database. To date, 1,035 mortgage certificates have been received out of 4,133 contacted by phone. Hope is not just about housing. It's about economic empowerment, community stability, and energy independence. Hope enables home ownership for lower-income individuals who would otherwise be lifelong renters. Buyers pay only for the construction costs of the house, which are covered by loans to Hope from the Housing Credit Fund. The land and the infrastructure will be paid for by photovoltaic, the earnings from photovoltaic, and I will speak to that shortly. So in this regard, Hope has to date borrowed $60 million and has commenced its repayment to the Housing Credit Fund to the tune of $4 million. This government covers the upfront land and development expenses, which expenses are projected to be repaid via the rooftop PV energy sales. Hope formed an SPV called Hope PV back in 2023 to address the issue of financing and to address the issue of the renewable energy infrastructure. We know that the delays in the PV installation stem from the new power grid stability requirements, necessitating additional battery storage investment. The Fair Trading Commission is currently reviewing the tariff adjustments to support these costs. Hope's unique financial model absorbs initial land costs, but this is recovered over a 15 to 20-year period as a result of payments through the PV. And that's the lifeline of the PV, the photovoltaic. Further, given that the life of the PV panels is 25 years, Homeowners have the benefit of 5 years of renewable energy for themselves. There were delays that really ought not to have happened. Indeed, the government as shareholder continued and continues to insist that we will provide the loans for the working capital through the Housing Credit Fund, that there needed to be greater diligence in the allocation of houses so that staged payment would ease the burden of financing the working capital to build the houses. This model is a revolutionary model. This model has attracted the attention of the UN Green Climate Fund and the IADB back in 2023. This is an industrial process of housing. This model would allow the ordinary Barbadian a house that is valued at $315,000 can be purchased at $220,000 as a result of the investment and the innovative renewable energy concept and the acceptance that the PV, when we get onto the grid, and that will be soon, will repay the Housing Credit Fund, indeed for the loan that we have borrowed, which is indeed what we call Startup Capital. Further, it is to be noted that it is always intended for us to be able to link the financial burden, like I said, to the installation of photovoltaics. As we go through our presentation to the people of this country, we admit that the government program is not perfect, but what it does, it unleashes $800 million of economic activity in this country if we indeed can achieve the construction of 2,000 houses a month. It's an ambitious goal. You have to set ambitious targets. We have some 20,000 applications for housing at National Housing Corporation. Should we sit and set a target, a meager target of 700 houses a year that was achieved between the period 2008 to 2018? No, we can't do that. We set an ambitious target that would allow the ordinary man and those civil servants that working for less than $4,000 a month, and needless I say, that 50 of those civil servants have indeed gained places at Vesper Gardens, where we have just built 148 houses.
Honourable Minister, you have 1 minute to wrap up.
Mr. Chairman, the last time there was a serious public housing program initiated by this government, it was under Tom Adams' administration in the year 1976 to 1986. And with due respect to the late Oinata, during which there was a significant number of houses built, they were predominantly in the private sector. And in so doing, he created the conditions under which houses were built at a rapid rate. This government is doing a combination of the two. And that is why we believe a stretch target of 2,000 houses a year is doable, both through HOPE joint venture partnership with private sector and also the National Housing Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, today I intend to elaborate on the workings of this ministry. I intend, even though HOPE is not part of these estimates of revenue and expenditure, to spend time dispelling all the negatives about HOPE. When a baby is born, it begins to creep. It falls, it gets up. It falls, it gets up. And after a few years, you see that baby walking steadily. We have created a program that is innovative, that has attracted the attention of the international arena. Countries are indeed seeking to follow this program, where we are utilizing the liquidity in the banking system of over $2 billion to indeed build houses, and as we say, take housing off of the consolidated fund, off budget. You'll hear more from me, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for the time to introduce my ministry and the work that we have done, some of the work that we have done so far. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable.
Mr. Chairman, I move that this head 93 stand bar.
Thank you. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I'm obliged to you, Mr. Chairman of Committees, and I will make a very strange request of you that you will deprive me of equal time. And Your Honor, I want you to deprive me of equal time because I like to think that I am given to kindness. And I want to be kind to the public officers in this ministry. I do. Since I want to give them the assurance that all that I say about government's interference, and I use that word deliberately, government's interference in the Ministry of Housing is not intended to reflect on these good and honorable public servants. This government, in relation to this Ministry of Housing, has given new definition to the word disaster. And please, good and honorable public servants, I do not intend to reflect on the service that you have given over the many years. But I repeat, Your Honor, I want you to shorten my address because I want to be kind, but it is difficult to be kind in a ministry that has overseen the disaster that has visited housing in this country over the last few years. I am not here to make comparisons between the worst of the ministries. But if one were to reduce political commentary to that exercise, this ministry competes favorably for that ignominious distinction. This ministry has been government's disaster. But we are not so concerned about the disaster that is government in relation to housing. We must now be more concerned about the deprivation that the citizens of this country have suffered in relation to their inaccess to affordable housing. We've heard this ministry go around for the last few years advertising that they're going to build houses for low-income people. That has been a dismal failure. This government has forfeited its housing mandate to colonization. Housing has been colonized by recklessness, incompetence, and hubris. And to sit here and hear all of these sweet words and these cliches about the intentions of this government. And I'm saying this government because, sir, I want you to shorten my address. The voice you heard before mine, he is not the author. He's not the author. And I had occasion to say last year what I understand this honorable minister's position to be, and I say that in all honesty. Even he may be the beneficiary, the recipient of some of my kindness, of some of my compassion, since I know that he is not the author. And he's made reference to hope. And hope on the landscape of this country, literally and figuratively, has been nothing but despair for the citizens of this country. I need not repeat the figure that government misinvested public funds from the Housing Credit Fund, $60 million, and we hear a soft and sweet voice today telling the citizens of this country that $4 million have been repaid so far. And if he seeks redemption, if the honorable member seeks redemption, he gives assurance on 2 occasions that the allocations to this ministry will exclude hope. If there's any redemption, it is not reassurance to the people of this country that monies belonging to the taxpayers were squandered upon the colonization of the housing project, the housing mandate in this country, I repeat, by recklessness, incompetence, and gross mismanagement of public funds. So it is no redemption to come here and say that they've repaid $4 million. It is no redemption to come here and say that they're not part of the allocation. We understand what this government is doing. We understand that this government is attempting to atone for the sin that has been hope. And they're allowing hope to extricate themselves from the housing mandate in this country. Not enough of those houses are available to poor people in this country. And that has always been the mandate, the noble mandate of the National Housing Corporation. And you have housing a few weeks ago admitted in this parliament that Vesperia Gardens is called the University of Vesperia because it was a learning exercise. It's fine for you to learn, but it's a rather expensive period of tuition, $60 million. And the project is still not complete. And the acronym that speaks towards alternative energy, that mandate has been unsatisfied. Let the people of Barbados hear the disaster and the failure. Please stop me, sir. The disaster and the failure that has been this project in betrayal of the hopes and aspirations of Barbadians. So no sweet words is enough atonement, is enough of an apology for what this government has done to housing. And I keep saying this government because I'm aware that this minister is the face of it. And as I said last year, his is the voice of Jacob, but the people of this country will locate the hand of Esau, the $60 million hand of Esau. And the people of this country will carry out a search for that $60 million. We don't care if you've paid back $4 million, bring the other 56, because you haven't brought housing to the people of this country in any manner that is satisfactory to the aspirations and hopes of the people of this country. Your Honor, my anger may reflect the anger of the people, of the taxpayers in this country who have put aside through this trusty government. I say trusty government, not trusted government, trusty government. And it is something to be angry about. And when you're visited with sweet words, I quoted one, we have listened, we have learned, and we have committed to doing better. When this exercise started, the First Ministry also said that theirs is a commitment to doing better. These veiled apologies now characterize these estimates. Everybody at this 11th hour is making a commitment to do better, and they want to do better because they have visited this country with failure. And this ministry must now rank, with apology to the public officers whom I do not condemn, this ministry must now rank as one of the shining disasters of this government. And I say shining because its incompetence, its recklessness, and its hubris is now in plain view of the public. There will be a lot more to say. And there will be another occasion on which to say it. But I want to end, Your Honor, by saying to this minister, yet there is some compassion within my bosom, because I know that he is not the author. And if there's any condemnation, we must say that this minister is the willing salesman of a project that has failed the people of this country. A project that has failed the ambitions of people who wish to own a house in this country. But he is not the author. This honorable minister is not the author. And if I'm to be kind, I extend kindness to this honorable minister for having been placed in that ignominious position of ministry. And that is the best that I can do for the honorable minister. And if there's the best that I can do, it is that I will say to the public officers in this ministry that there is no condemnation extended in your direction, except that this interloper called hope has dashed the hopes of people who want housing in Barbados. This interloper has been an agent in squandermania. This interloper has been an agent in recklessness. And this interloper must now give account to the people of Barbados for $60 million. And it goes beyond $60 million because the so-called University of Vespera is still not finished. No photovoltaic systems. The housing complement there, they're still not completed. I wanted to speak for a lot shorter time, sir, so I'm going to stop. But this ministry has allowed itself to be defined by the word disaster. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of the Opposition. We will now go to the floor of the House. Honourable members, you have the opportunity to ask a question, and then you would be allowed 3 supplementary questions in relation to that question asked. Honourable Minister, you have 5 minutes to answer any question and to direct such a question to any member of your team. Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the Minister and his team. Sir, my question relates to the 20-year program. Could you shed some light in relation to what or how far NAC have reached in relation to providing those tenants? Because I know back in 2022, this program was put on pause. So can you shed some light in relation to this program? Because I have a few tenants who reside in Deacon's Farm and Rosemont who are still paying rent and who are living in those units now for more than 20 years. Would you be able to shed some light in relation to this program and how soon those tenants will be able to receive their conveyances and also, just like anyone else, be able to benefit from the program in terms of owning the unit?
Thank you, Member for St. Michael Northwest. I will give the history. You said I have 5 minutes, Mr. Chair? Said I have 5 minutes?
Yes, for every question.
So, but don't let me give the history. Just let me give you the facts with respect to the 20-year transfer program. To date, as I speak to you, we have conveyed 590 units under the 20-year transfer program. Out of 69 units at Rosemont, we have conveyed and transferred 42. These are persons who have been living within these units for over 20 years. Ferniehurst, we have 112 persons that are eligible. We have conveyed 87 units in Ferniehurst. In Deacon's Farm, we have 255 persons that are eligible. We have conveyed 52 of those. Now, there are a number of challenges with respect to the 20-year program that we are seeking to address. And this relates to the infrastructure, the engineering design. We don't want to convey units that are not of a good standard. So that is why we are deliberately working on the wells program. We are deliberately working on the electrical upgrade program. And I will speak a bit on the electrical upgrade program because some of these units require us changing from a simple, years ago, these units were built with single phase and these units could not accommodate washing machines, flat screen TVs, microwaves. So we have to upgrade the electrical. We would have seen some fires, we would have experienced some fires within these units. So the electrical upgrade program is seeking to address 2,687 units at a cost of $21.6 million. And we are seeking to upgrade to Government Electrical Engineering Division standard, where the supply and the distribution upgrade will see a single phase 3-wire 230, 150 volt system to accommodate those televisions and those flat screen TVs, and those dishwashers. The main cable size has increased, the main breakers have increased. So we have started that work and we have conveyed to date 590. As I speak to you, we have some 2,000 of those units to convert over to Barbados Light and Power. And we are hoping that this year, between the next 2 years, we will be able to indeed transfer, if not all of these units, most of these units to the tenants. It is a long process. It is not an easy process, but the work has started. And indeed, what I can do for you is to give you the actual expenditure that we have spent on Deacon's Farm thus far. 320 units, we have spent $2.5 million. Ferniehurst, 154 units. The projection is $1.2 million. These are projections in an effort to transfer all of these units. So to date, 2,323 units have been upgraded by contractors at a cost of $19.1 million, which is 83% of the original budget. And we are in the process of being transitioned, like I said, to the new system by BLMP. And another 165 units are at varying stages of completion. And these units are within the areas of Eden Lodge, Watton, Wildy, Pleasant Hall, Simmertest, Maynards in St. Peter, Gall Hill in Christchurch, the Ivy, the Pine, Martins Road, Regent Hill, Parkinson Field, Phillips Road. So those are the areas that are in progress at this stage. And I said we have finished 2,323 at a cost of $19.1 million. And I will list those. Haynesville, we have completed 280 units at Haynesville. Torps Gardens, 23 units. Only 23 were supposed to be done. We have done 23. Haynesville, we have done all 280 units. Bagatelle, 10 units. We have completed all 10. St. Stephen's, 32 units. We have completed all 32. Deacon's Farm, 325. We have completed those. Ferniehurst, 154.
You have 30 seconds.
And last but by no means least, Silver Hill, 240. We have finished those 240 units, in addition to 26 out of 85 for Gall Hill. And I can list and go on. I can look around at my colleagues, the Ivy. I can see my good friend on the right, 64 units allocated in the IV. We have finished 48, and 12 of those units are in progress and will be finished by the end of this financial year. So we have done a lot of work. $19.1 million to indeed upgrade 2,323 units, which is 84%. And most importantly to me, we have utilized all local contractors. 43 local contractors are employed on this project as I speak to you.
All right, thank you, Minister. I am assuming that you're speaking about those tenants who benefited under the program before it was put on pause. So my question to you, I am speaking on behalf of those tenants now who have not benefited as yet, who are still paying rent since the program is on pause. I'm trying to find out now when those tenants who have not benefited as yet will benefit from the program.
The program is not on pause.
Pardon?
We have, in the estimates, we have budgeted $3.5 million this year for the electrical upgrade and the wells program. So the program is not on pause. The work that will be done to those persons, they will fall in the program. But with respect to the 20-year program, like I said, we have not yet reached that limit, and those persons have been put into the program, and I have listed to you the ones that we will address this year. And most of the ones we will address this year fall under the 20-year program. These are persons who indeed are waiting to own this piece of property. The others that you mentioned, they are not yet within the 20-year limit, but we have a duty as National Housing Corporation to provide the necessary maintenance to those units.
All right, the reason that I'm stressing on it, sir, I wrote an essay on numerous occasions on the behalf of tenants, whether Deacons Farm, Rosemont, Ferniehurst, Golden Acre. And the correspondence that I receive outlined that these persons who are living within the units for 20 years or more should continue paying rent until further notice. So that's why I'm stressing to find out, like, when they will actually receive the unit and be eligible to stop paying rent, just like all the others that have benefited before the program was on pause.
The reality member, and I would probably ask the Deputy General Manager for NHC to speak on this, but the reality, I can say it clearly. There's no demand by NHC for those persons who have fallen within the 20-year program to continue to pay rent. Some have stopped, and we have not at all asked them to pay rent. Indeed, during the 2008 20-year transfer program that was initiated by this government, the former government, sorry, we recognize that, there were a number of persons who continued to pay rent. They took money from them, and we had to give them back the money. So there's no obligation, and I speak on behalf of the National Housing Corporation. I will ask the Deputy General Manager to come forward to speak on this. There's no obligation for them to continue to pay rent. So Mr. Roger Ward, the Deputy General Manager, I would ask him to come and have a few words on this program.
Good morning to the Honourable House. My name is Roger Ward, Deputy General Manager, Acton, National Housing Corporation. Roger Ward, Deputy General Manager, National Housing Corporation, Acton. With respect to the question asked by the Honourable Member, there are currently 418 persons who have qualified by way of reaching 20 years across various estates. We have not yet notified or sent letters out to those persons. Since we are
in a position where we are seeking to undertake certain repairs to those units to bring them to a state that they can be transferred. But certainly, those 418 persons, including those persons of Deacons, Ferniehurst, and Rosemont, will be receiving letters. I cannot tell you, Honourable Member, that the letters will be forwarded by the end of this month, but those persons will be treated no less than the other 3,090 persons who have thus far received letters.
Thank you. That sounds good. I'm happy to hear that. So I will keep in touch with those tenants who have reached out to me and ask them to just keep me up to date on when they receive these letters, or else I will have to continue writing. All right, my second question relates to abandoned cars, auto parts that some mechanics obviously leave on NHC lands, whether it be in Rosemont, Deacon's Farm, Ferniehurst. I want to know what the management of NHC is doing about this. I have a few residents who complain about the abandoned cars, the auto parts, you know, sometimes the fact that these things cause a lot of rodents and infestation within the community. I wrote NHC numerous times about this situation, and to this day, the situation still remains the same. I really think that NHC needs to pay closer attention to issues like this. So one of the things that I would like to know is if within this financial year, if NHC plan to, you know, allocate any resources to really address matters like these.
Thank you, Honourable Member. And you send the letters, we receive the letters, and I receive letters, Honourable Member, from a number of persons across the country. It's true, and when I mentioned that there are things we have learned, and we have to indeed put measures and systems in place. We don't have an asset register created at NHC, and there's no doubt about that. But what we need to do is to police our estates, the lands that we know are within the purview of National Housing Corporation. And it's true there's been a measure of some delinquency in addressing these matters. Last year we met and we've made a few changes. We've seen a concerted effort by our Chief Maintenance Officer, and I will assure you that probably before the end of this financial year, we'll put those issues to rest. Of course, letters will have to come. There are ways to do things. You don't look to circumvent the law, and indeed we're a caring government, and we know some of these small businessmen make $1 from their businesses. One of the things that we're looking to do as a government, and the Prime Minister speaks to this very often, BADC, they're looking to create an avenue and an outlet where some of these small businesses can indeed ply their trade. So for me, this is a case of NHC policing its assets within the estates and seeking to keep the environment in a very clean state. Because like you rightfully said, old cars create rodents, old cars present several, environmental challenges and health challenges. The amendment to the Health Act services will help. The Health Services Act also will help. And in addition to that, the Lands and Service Department recently created an app to map all derelict buildings and vehicles across the country. And I know they will speak to that later, and that is helping the Ministry of the Environment, in addition to the Health Services Act, to address these problems. But once it is on NHC's land, despite the Health Services Act, we have a duty to make sure that those persons living in the estates are indeed comfortable. So we will be utilizing the act as well as seeking to address this through sending letters and, working with them, because we don't want to stop a man from earning a dollar. If we could find some place that is comfortable for him and that is industrial, more so than residential, that he can play that trade. And he have some of the same issues within St. George too, not even in the estates, but on the roadways leading to the farm. We have challenges where the residents, they complain about old cars and also mechanics working on the wayside. So it is our duty to address this as holistically through the Health Services Act and also through National Housing Management by way of letters.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, it's not my intention to stop any person from earning a dollar, but it's their responsibility as well, while earning a dollar, to keep the surroundings clean and not to inconvenience other people, right? My third question, sir, relates to the maintenance of these units. Is it the responsibility of NHC to maintain these units after they are conveyed or the tenants receive their conveyance? Because some tenants seem to think that NHC is supposed to still maintain the units. And if you could at least provide some clarity in terms of where the maintenance is concerned, because if the unit is given to the tenant, I think that it is the tenant responsibility to maintain it. If the unit is owned by the government, then I think it's the government responsibility to maintain the unit. So if you could at least, provide some clarity in relation to the maintenance of these units, where the government is responsible and where the tenant is responsible.
Honourable member, in posing the question, you answered the question. And I would clarify what you said in simple terms. When you convey something to someone, we have many attorneys here, they own it. Then to ask NHC to maintain it is indeed not what we intend. The intention is to create ownership within these estates so that persons can have an asset. They can leverage that asset to educate the children. When you own something, you have what I call, you are bankable. And indeed, you can leverage that. But that's it. You can't get the benefit without the part. So what we intend to do, though, the reorganization of NHC will see NHC offering a maintenance service at a fee. So you can rest assured we will not leave our tenants hanging. The wells will be the commonality for NHC to maintain. We will maintain the sewage systems. We transfer the property. We are also looking at a possibility of us owning the roofs and utilizing the photovoltaics, the earning from photovoltaics to help maintain those units. Because we recognize the persons within those units are low income earners, even though you may find one or two units with some very high income earners, one or two. And I have seen some. But most persons, 95% of those persons who occupy the estates, the 59 now, the 49 now, 52 estates, because we just added 3 at Haggett Hall. We added 2 at White Park Road, so they're now 52. And the duty is for you to maintain those units. But NHC, the reorganizing and the repurposing of NHC will see a vibrant maintenance section that will offer services. And we don't know at what cost, but certainly we will not be looking to burden the estate owners, the owners of property that we know transfer to them, where they use some for maintenance. But you can tell your tenants that once we convey the unit, they own it and they are responsible for it. We will maintain responsibility for the sewerage systems, but they are responsible for the units, the maintenance of the units. you'll be hearing more from us on that.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honourable Member, I know that this is certainly a very difficult ministry. It is one that touches on the lives of almost every Barbadian, and in particular, ordinary Barbadians who really just simply want to own a piece of the rock. I have responsibility for a constituency, quite unlike most others, because it comprises the largest housing estate. It also has a middle class and upper class development as well within it. And I am often at the mercy of the National Housing Corporation for a number of interventions in relation to the estates in particular, the Pine and Wildy area. The previous speaker obviously shares with me some of the sentiments as it relates to the housing estates. And I hear in your opening, obviously express the intention, certainly your responses express intentions to certainly do a number of the upgrades to the electrical, but also the sewage systems. Now, for me, it is a very complex matter, particularly because the Pinelands Estate, as you know, is an area which has a number of illegal extensions. And therefore, I don't think that the same principles may apply in relation to the handover of the Pinelands estates. Actually, I think that there has to be a very specific carve-out because of the specific challenges that are faced in the Pinelands area. Because of the challenges over the years of being able to provide housing for persons, I often say people have figured out for themselves how to create their own housing. They're not waiting on government to be able to provide accommodation. But it means that many of the structures that have been created in the community and constructed are over the sewage systems. It means that there is a need for budgetary allocation to seamlessly phase out some of the old systems while at the same time removing some of the structures that exist within the community to be able to allow for better planning and better layout of the housing estate. I note in your estimates that you have increased the amount for the sewage systems up to 3.55 million this financial year. Last year it was 1.5 million. And I would just want to hear from you whether in this financial year, how are you intending to be able to treat the circumstances specifically to the Pinelands Estate and certainly to the others where there are these levels of encroachments over the sewage systems?
Thank you. Thank you, the PM member for St. Michael Southeast. We know very well you have the largest housing estate, and very often I refer to you as Housing Minister number 2. The reality is you hit the nail on the head. When we did our surveying, and currently we have a number of persons who are doing surveys in the Pine. The Pine, as I can tell you, the Pine is not part of the electrical upgrade that I mentioned, the 19.1 million, because of the nature of the Pine. And that's why we acquired the land through planning gains at Lower Burney to indeed address the densities and some of the challenges in the Pine. While I'm going to allow the Deputy GM to speak on this, I just want to say the 20 acres of land that has been allocated at Lower Burney, that is indeed one of the initiatives that this government has engaged in which to address the challenges within the Pine. 20 acres of land at a density of 13 to 14, that should give you 260 houses. And what we intend to do, coming out of the survey that we have done a social survey, and you know this better than I do because you told me when you go into the Pine, you're going to find this. The older population don't want to leave the Pine. The younger population, they're prepared to stay in the Pine. We have, within the Pine, we have sometimes within families, and I look at the report and it really baffled me. We have some families, and I sympathize with you. We have some homes with 10 persons living in a unit. How in this day we are talking about a housing program and persons criticizing a housing program, but they don't realize the magnitude of the challenges that we have with respect to housing and what you're facing. I don't even want to get into the impact of crime, because we know, and the Prime Minister often say this to us, if a man is competing for time to sleep, where would he go, especially a man? A young boy, he goes to the block. And that is why we have to fast track this program. We have finished the environmental impact assessment. We have looked at the areas in Regent Hill and the other areas. And with your guidance, we have involved you as the MP. We are hoping this year, by August, to commence construction at Lower Burney. And we intend to phase out some of the areas and the dilapidated areas, because the encroachments, I'm going to allow the Deputy GM to speak to that, or the CLO. Actually, I should allow the Chief Legal Officer from National Housing Corporation to speak to that, Mrs. Henrietta Bowen-Ford. But the ultimate goal and objective of this project at Lower Burney is to address the density and the challenges in the Pine with housing. And indeed, we're looking for some more land in the vicinity. The Senior Minister and I don't want to preempt what we have not agreed to, but we have identified some 60 more acres of land that is nearby that you can benefit from, and the people in the Pine. When we have literally moved out one section of the Pine, we intend to push down those houses once persons are indeed adequately relocated temporarily, and rebuild structures. And indeed, within a 5-year period, I don't think that us in here will recognize the Pine. And we're hoping that this will solve most of your problems in terms of persons competing for spaces to live. I am not going to sit here and allow anyone to drag the housing program through the mud. We indeed have done a lot of work in this country. We have built 117 houses to address the issues of Hurricane Elsa. We have also built new builds, 539, plus the 117 with respect to the East-West projects that we have built. And if you add that, you can see that that is more than the last administration built in 10 years. And I have not even included HOPE. I have not even included the East-West project. I have not even included UDC and RDC poverty eradication program. So we are on a mission to address the challenges that we find in the Pine, and not only in the Pine, some of these challenges in the low-income earners districts. And the Pine, I am happy to say to you, the designs will be finished by the end of this month. I actively call the person who's doing the designs. We have, as I speak to you, a D8 now clearing the lands at Lower Burney, and we intend to start the road infrastructure in phases. We're not waiting until we finish the entire road to start building the houses. This has to be done in phases to address this problem in a short time frame. But I will allow the CLO of National Housing to address the encroachments, because it is not my wish to speak here the entire day, but I have some competent members in this ministry who indeed can let you know some of the challenges, because what was prepared here, every single member that is sitting in here helped this minister to come prepared in this estimate to tell the country what we are doing. So over to you, CLO, Mrs. Henrietta Bowen-Ford of National Housing.
Thank you, Minister. Henrietta Bowen-Ford, National Housing Corporation, Chief Legal Officer. Specifically in relation to encroachments, when we are conveying any of these units, one of the critical elements is that we are conveying the land free of encumbrances. And these encroachments present an encumbrance, so we cannot convey. The encroachments, they vary from wall structures that have been erected, fences, a number of different things. So we have not in any way tried to disadvantage persons who have had these encroachments. We understand the social factors that have affected the creation of them in the first instance. And one of the reasons why we have to, or it was looked at in terms of relocating persons to Lower Burnie, was to create better and suitable accommodation for those persons. So one of the reasons too that has affected us in transferring some of these properties in a faster way is due to these encroachments, but we're finding ways and means to address the issue. And we have a plan. I think that we will be successful in that regard. So it's a win-win situation in terms of persons moving to a better accommodation and we being able to transfer and give them proper title. Thank you.
Let me just add here, I should have said it, and I was hoping CLO said it. Before the cabinet is a paper right now, where we're asking cabinet to approve or to recommend through our learned attorney general and the other esteemed lawyers through Act of Parliament how we can convey these lands with encumbrances, and you hopefully you saw that paper at cabinet. We would have discussed it, you know, and we have been asked to make a few changes. I hate to use the word something is at cabinet because if it is not approved, it is not approved. But those are some of the things that we are looking at. The legal way in which we can get these units transferred with encumbrances once they are technically and structurally sound. Those are some of the things that we are looking at, because how are we going to remove all of them? I'm certain that the member for St. Michael Southeast can tell you it is a challenge to remove all those encumbrances. I toured the point with you, and you know it is a challenge. Those that don't have encumbrances through Act of Parliament as well, we're hoping that the Attorney General and the Prime Minister and the members of Cabinet agree to the recommendations that has been put forward by National Housing Corporation team, and hopefully before the end of the month, we will have word to the country how we intend to transfer these units through an Act of Parliament.
Thank you, Minister. A lot of information provided there. I am certainly pleased on behalf of the people of St. Michael Southeast to say thank you for the knowledge that we will soon be seeing some movement in the Lower Burnie area. I would not want, though, and I would hope you will correct this, for it to go there, that the 20 acres is only for the Pinelands community. Because I know that this administration also has another 20 acres. This was part of a planning game project whereby 20 acres was allocated to St. Michael Southeast to ease the density, but also to be shared by some of the other MPs, particularly persons within the surrounding constituencies that were close by. And there's another 20 acres which is to be allocated also for construction, I believe with joint venture projects, to be able to facilitate persons who will have disposable income that they can also benefit from a mortgage. So perhaps you may want to just speak to that as well. And my follow-up question on that would be in relation to whether these estimates adequately reflect the resources that are going to be needed by the ministry to be able to ensure that the conveyancing is done in a timely manner. I mean, a lot of us who have these estates have heard, you know, year after year of the fact that it is, you know, resources are going to be applied to this. Are we budgeting in these estimates to accelerate this process? Because as you have admitted, people need these units. Ordinary people need these units in order to be able to take bail for their children, to be able to make improvements to the housing conditions that they are in. And therefore, I believe that we owe it to these residents in these communities to place resources in this ministry to be able to allow for that transition to take place within at least the next year. So my question to you is, do we have enough resources allocated in these estimates to accelerate in this financial year a lot of the projects that are required to ensure that people are able to transition to home ownership?
Thank you, Member for St. Michael Southeast. This is why I call you Housing Minister number 2. You're able to explain and asking the question. And I will go there first, and then I'll come back to the allocation. The 40 acres that we received through planning gain, and Planning Gain, Section 36 of the Planning and Development Act 2019 Act. I think that it allows someone who has applied for a town planning application to indeed do that through either their application approved either by passing some monetary or some other aspect of development that we receive through planning gains at Lower Burney. And that is within the Act, Section 36. We have not done anything different. Some guys usually say in the ministry something for something. I can't say that, but it's within the legislation that you approach town planning and you say, hey, listen, look, I want to develop this and I want an application for this. And I'm prepared to give the government in return a piece of land to develop or monetary or some other contribution that aids to economic development of the country. So you can refer to that section. But 40 acres, and I came to this chamber, 40 acres have been invested, 20 acres in Hope, Inc. And you heard a lot of comments about Hope this morning. We have allocated some 550 acres of land to Hope. I will speak to that later as well. And if that is a company that we are looking to follow up, then I'm sorry. 500 and I think 60 something acres of land. So 20 acres at Lower Burney will go to Hope, and 20 acres has been invested in NHC with respect to joint venture partnership, so we can provide the social housing. Like you said, it will be shared, but we know as a country, we often look who needs it mostly, and we address it, whether it is 80%, 20%, 70-30, and that will be discussed. But having said that, we have budgeted for the infrastructure at Lower Burney, and that is why we're able now to engage a date and the design work, and then we are going into the infrastructure, which is the longest aspect of any housing program. And once we're through that, the easiest part is to put up the structures. And we're looking at different models and innovative housing. And I'm certain the chairman of Hope, he will speak shortly on how Hope is being, on how Hope is being industrialized and some of the different innovative housing options that are afforded to us. We went to Texas and New York last year and Miami last year to look at a steel, light gauge steel factory in Texas, and then we went to autoclave aerated concrete plant that produce structures that are mold proof, fire resistant, water resistant, and that can withstand hurricanes up to 140 miles per hour. We did not go by ourselves. We went with a private sector team. I led the delegation, and the consultant to the Prime Minister on infrastructure, who's no longer with us and who has gone on to CDB, he too was part of that team. And we're looking at that type of structure at Lower Burney and some other areas. The details are being fleshed out now between finance and the Minister of Infrastructure before they are handed over to housing. But we have indeed budgeted for the infrastructural works in this year, and it is my belief that you'll see some houses going up in Lower Burney this year. To tell you that we can put up 100 structures, no, we'll do it in phases. I'm hoping we can at least begin to see 50 of those structures move, and then we go in, and while we are still carrying our work at Lower Burney, we indeed would engage in the rehabilitation within the point in those areas that we will so identify.
Thank you, Minister. I asked that question not only in the context of the Lower Burney development, but really a wider issue for the ministry in terms of its execution of the projects, because I think the public can appreciate that our track record as a government is far superior to what preceded us. We inherited, and certainly you as minister, the other senior minister, and others who came before you, obviously had to deal with a lot of unfinished houses, a lot of challenges with structures. I can name Constant, I can name Parish Land, I can name Lancaster, and I can go on. Perhaps the Honourable Leader of the Opposition would do well to refer to the notes and certainly the debates in this House as it relates to the track record of the previous administration on housing. So we have had to correct a number of things over the years. And I really want you to apply your mind to whether the execution of the projects, which is where the greatest criticism comes, the time frame within which we are able to execute these projects. If these estimates, and I don't want to repeat the question, but I want you to zoom in on whether these estimates will now give the ministry the resources that are necessary to execute these projects, whether it is the persons who live in the housing units in terms of ensuring that we are speeding up conveyancing, whether it is in relation to ensuring that the maintenance of our units are on par with what is expected by those who reside in them. And even in relation to my ministry, because we work quite closely together in relation to the Ministry of Transport and Works, in relation to things like the acquisition of land, ensuring that the pace at which the Ministry of Housing is able to move is at a pace that does not frustrate ordinary Barbadians who are waiting on certain steps to be carried out by the ministry. Now, I see there is an increase in the allocation for instance, the acquisitions this year. And I would perhaps want you in the next question to really speak to what is happening in terms of acquisitions, because this is another, I think, frustration for the public. We go to build a road, we're trying to acquire the lands, and in some cases the houses, to be able to have to relocate someone in order to remove them from that location. And the process seems to take quite long for us to be able to remove that person and place them in alternate accommodation temporarily or permanently, or to be able to relocate them to another location permanently. So my question to you is resources. Can we convince the public that this year that we are moving in the direction of these types of allocations to be able to, whether it is in-house or whether it is the outsourcing of the professional services, to ensure that this ministry is able to build out the capacity that is needed to execute?
All right. Thank you, DPM, and I see you're pulling for a broader scope on housing. That's why, but I have 5 minutes. That's why I've been limiting. Let me go to MTW relocations, and certainly you'll see on the head 532 we have allocated. I think it's 532 speaks to those persons at Moore's Bottom and Hopewell and St. Andrew and Spa Hill. Those relocations that we sit monthly and we discuss. 6 houses are to be relocated from Moore's Bottom, St. Andrew and Spa Hill in St. Joseph, and 7 houses are to be relocated from Hopewell and St. Andrew. These have been budgeted for in the 2025-2026 budget. Now, Whitehill to Farmers location, we know we have had a number of years where persons have been waiting to be relocated at Whitehill to Farmers. I think we have now relocated 15 out of 19. And during the last financial year, we built, I think, at least 5 to 6 houses, and we're still finishing up a few. So we have budgeted for that aspect under the relocation program. In terms of housing, though, and the Prime Minister often said, we have to utilize the liquidity within our banking system, and I was trying to explain to the honourable member for Christchurch South, we don't have the level of resources in terms of finances to pump millions and millions yearly into housing. That's why the whole industrial process has been created, whereby we utilize the liquidity within the banking system. Let me explain. When you go to build a house, you get a design. That design is approved by town planning. You get the certificate of compliance, and you begin your process through a mortgage, through drawdowns. When you reach your foundation, before you start your foundation, the bank releases X amount for your foundation. When you finish, you get to ring beam, the bank releases another amount for your ring beam. So you have utilized the bank's finances to build your home. That is the process that we are seeking to use. And I was seeking to explain during my lead up to these questions that the Housing Credit Fund is there only to provide what we call working capital so that hope indeed can get going. That is the gas for the car to move, but it is not coming back to the gas station to tell the gas station, stop me up for free. It is creating through the banking system enough money to repay the loan and indeed to sustain it. That's why it is a limited liability company. And we are hoping that 5 years down the road, ordinary Barbadians can indeed have shares in Hope, because Hope was not designed to utilize funds from the consolidated fund indefinitely. The Housing Credit Fund, it is borrowing the money at 1.15% interest. And I heard the noise with respect to, we're paying $4 million thus far. That is the commitment, the agreement that was signed between the central bank and Hope. So Hope is following its obligations. And I don't see anything wrong with providing the working capital so that Hope indeed can build these houses. In addition, I'm a member for St. Michael Southeast. National Housing has engaged in a joint venture program for years. Last year, during the period, 2022 to 2025, they have built 193 houses through a joint venture program with the private sector. And if you take your mind back to Atlantic Breeze, where there were challenges, minor challenges, with 1 or 2 houses, but you have 250 houses going up at Atlantic Breeze in a joint venture. What that does, National Housing, the land vested in National Housing, National Housing sells this land to the private investor at, I think, between $5 and $7 a square foot. The investor goes to the bank, similar to what Hope will do. Goes to the bank, borrows the money, invests in infrastructure, and then use the process of drawdowns, the mortgage, to take a design and they give to you. They said, member for St. Joseph, you like this design? Yes, this is your design. You go to the bank and you get your money. Member for Christchurch West, you like this design? This is the house you want? You take this design, you go and get your money. Member for St. James South, this is what you want. You go to the bank and you get your money. And that is how the joint venture program has been implemented over the years, and 193 houses between NHC and the joint venture partners. Presently, we have some 100 acres at Vineyard that indeed we will put into a joint venture program with a local partner. So we have taken the housing off books, but those relocations at Spa Hill and Reese Road, we have budgeted for those relocations. But in terms of the housing program, we intend to utilize the liquidity within the banking system. Social housing, of course, and emergency housing, this government has to fund. We have within the estimates, $11 million allocated through NHC for those 48 units at Haynesville. And we intend to start that this year. So we are building out the housing program. The 148 houses at Vesper Gardens, yes, that was the first project. It's quite obvious it needed seed capital. This was done during COVID. This was done at a time when there was a labor shortage in this country. There's still a labor shortage in this country. And the honorable member would do well to know that the 40 million or the 60 million that Hope has borrowed from the Housing Credit Fund, all was not used at Vesper Garden nor at Pool. Some of this money was used to purchase 60 houses, Jurville houses, 11 of which have been completed and persons are in these houses at Clifden in St. Philip. And presently we have some 27 houses being built at River Crescent. And 10 of these houses have been completed. And the other 17 houses will be finished by the end of this financial year. Acquisitions for road and relocations, I'm going to pass on to my PS, who will speak on funding allocated for acquisitions. A former chief property manager who knows this better than any other person in this room. So over to you, my good PS.
Good afternoon. I'm Nikki Smith, the Permanent Secretary, Acting Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. The question asks related to the speed with which we are able to respond when the MTW proposes to do a road project, and it is then indicated to us that someone needs to be relocated, and we also need to acquire lands. We have recently restarted the monthly meetings where the MTW and the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance will meet so that we will know what the program is for the MTW. We don't get a lot of money for acquisitions up front, but we will be able, if we know that you propose to do a road, that we can get the process started, because if it is going to be a compulsory acquisition, we have to get the Section 3 notices in place and the Section 4 notice if the road is critical to be started. What has happened in the past is that MTW, because it was an emergency, has started to do the work, which means then that we can't go to the acquisition process. So we're having these monthly meetings to make sure that we follow the process so that no one is disadvantaged, and that we are aware that 2 houses need to be relocated, we need temporary accommodation, and we will therefore try and put all of that in place.
Thank you for that, Minister. And again, I commend you and your team. You've acknowledged the challenges, but I certainly can say from where I sit that I've seen the improvements, and I reserve my right to come back in as second minister to you on this very important ministry later in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. We go to Christchurch East, but we're asking all honourable members to be mindful of your time. We have several persons who will have their questions to ask, so please be mindful of your time, both in terms of your questioning and in terms of your responses. Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Chairman, I do note that you always remind us to be cognizant of the rules and to follow the time limits every time I'm about to speak. But let the record show that I have not breached the rules once in these estimates.
Breach them now if you don't go ahead with your question.
Sir, to the Minister, you know, I do not envy you, and I don't envy you because yours has to be perhaps one of the hardest ministries to have. It is perhaps one of the most critical. From the time your children were brought up, everybody wants a piece of the rock. Everybody wants to own a piece of the rock. You just want a piece of the rock, but you want a house to go on a piece of the rock. And you then have to satisfy that demand and that aspiration for all sectors. It is not an easy fix. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a cookie-cutter approach that you have a housing policy and it covers everybody who wants a house or alleviates housing density and people density as well. Yours is the task to try to provide the solutions for middle income, middle to low income persons who probably would never own a house if not for the work of the National Housing Corporation. So I commend you for your steadfast plodding along at your task. I have to take some exception to some of the ramblings of the Honourable the opposition, because I, for one, due to our close association, know how stretched the Housing Corporation, National Housing Corporation, and all associated providers of housing have been over the last couple of years, especially since ELSA. And since ELSA, you have worked hand in glove with my ministry, which is responsible for disaster preparedness and recuperation, to put people back on their feet, get people back in the housing, in many instances rebuilding housing in perhaps the most ambitious social program ever mounted by any government in Barbados, the provision of housing for those persons affected by ELSA. Having said all of that, that was by way of recognizing the work that you've done and saying, hold the course. There will always be people sniping from the outside who have no clue what it is to do a hard day's work, right? But you can hold your head up high, you and the persons in your ministry and your departments, in knowing that you have done your best in what has been an exceedingly trying time under an exceedingly ambitious project. But I started by saying that, some people, we have to be aware that there are those at the bottom of the level, of the ladder. Some people with the best will in the world will never qualify for a mortgage. They will never qualify for a mortgage or a loan to get housing, but they still have to be housed. And a lot of these people depended and came up through the rent-to-own system and scheme of successive governments. I know that has been on pause for a little while as we explore other options for housing. But I am concerned that there are persons who, while they can eke out the dollars to pay the rent and pay the rent over a period of time, can never actually approach a financial institution based on the uncertainty of their earnings. They may be self-employed. Based on the vagaries of their particular situation, the only real option to them lies in something akin to the rent-to-own. So I want to know, what is there in the works over the next year to provide some avenue for housing for persons who cannot possibly qualify for a mortgage?
Thank you, member for Christchurch East. And it is clear that the members in this chamber are in tune with the demands of housing in this country and what we are faced with as a government. Now, the rent-to-own program is an active one. When we came to office, or should I say, let me come forward, in 2022, when we announced the 10,000 housing revolution that we make no apologies for, and I will speak to that later as well. Part of the mandate was to allow those persons who you say wouldn't qualify for a mortgage, but we say are earning less than $2,000 a month, and who their expenses or disposal income after they pay their bills. Some of them have $1,000, some have just more than $1,000, and some are even paying rent. So why then continue to pay rent, which we term dead money, rather than to pay rent to own? And indeed, we started the program, and I can tell you as I speak to you, there's some person living in Clifden, where my good friend from St. Philip South grew up, in 2 rent-to-own houses. And I can tell you that there's some persons who have signed up at NHC and who will go to St. Lucie Coconut Hall and rent-to-own houses. So the rent-to-own program is active, and again, I'm going to allow the Deputy General Manager of NHC, because when these houses are built, they're handed over to the National Housing Corporation, indeed to house persons, and he will give you the full details of the rent-to-own in terms of the percentage of their earnings, how much they pay in rent, and how much goes towards the actual home ownership. So when they've reached a stage that they become bankable, then they can go to the bank and receive a mortgage. we have no stipulated time frame set on it. We say 7 to 10 years, which is really a stipulated time frame, but we are flexible with low-income earners in terms of, we know persons can't take the whole entire wages and put into the rent-to-own program. So we are flexible. We sit down with them, and we have a department within NHC that work with them and come up with the best possible payment solution. And the rent range from $80 to $161 weekly. But I'm going to hand over to the Deputy General Manager so he can take you through the rudiments of the rent-to-own program.
Good afternoon again to the House. Roger Ward, Deputy General Manager, National Housing Corporation. Indeed, the rent-to-own program is a continuing one with the NHC. We currently have rent-to-own houses at Early Heights, Greens in St. George, River Crescent, Riverview. I'm sure that members will be aware that Cabinet, through a yellow paper, had indicated that we should look at implementing a 30-year rent-to-own program. That paper has been prepared, has been submitted to the ministry, and I'm sure that it will come to Cabinet for further discussion. But the intent is to look at those persons who the Honourable Member indicated would not be able to qualify for mortgages. We have people at the level of gas attendants who obviously would not qualify in any stream for a mortgage, but who nevertheless have families and require homes. And certainly a program like the 30-year rent-to-own, where based on your income, your net income, we look at 30% of that to structure a monthly payment. So for argument's sake, if an individual earns net of statutory requirements, let's say $1,500 a month, a payment for that person could be around $450 monthly. That person can pay that $450 towards the ownership of the house. If their circumstances improve over time, they can certainly move into a mortgage, but they would have the understanding that over the 30-year period, they will be able to liquidate the costs of any house that is allocated to them based on certain values and so on. The Cabinet had also determined that all developments going forward for social housing, that a certain percentage of those houses must be given to the rent-to-own program. And as Minister Sutherland indicated, so far we have allocated houses under that directive at Clifton. We've done so at Hodds in St. George, and we're certainly intent on following that dictate at River Crescent as these houses are built out. Persons can come into the National Housing Corporation and apply, and we will assess them, as I said, based on their net income and on their abilities to pay.
the member, thank you, Deputy GM, spoke about the 30-year rent to own, which is basically allowing persons to rent until, they own the house. But there are some families who would want to go to the bank, get a mortgage, get this over with, and own their own home, because as you rent to own, you have equity in the house. So that is what we are seeking to push, the home ownership in a shorter period of time for those persons who are earning below $2,000 a month. But it is an active program, yes, and we may be looking to extend the program to a 30-year program whereby persons can indeed rent for that length of time. But it is my wish that we can turn persons into bankable persons, and persons can indeed achieve a credit rating, that they can leverage that asset to indeed educate the children and indeed create more assets. And that's how persons generate wealth from generations to generation. So the rent to own program is an active one, and I want to thank you, Deputy GM, for bringing that 30-year initiative to the Parliament. But we are hoping that persons can indeed cash in before the 30 years and own their own homes. But it is a very active program.
Thank you very much for that, Minister. What I would suggest then is that we be careful of mixed messages, because a number of people have indicated that they have gone to national housing and been told that there's no option for rent to own. So I suggest, and I know I've sent a couple of people there to put their names and apply for what it is that they want, and they've come back with that feedback, and I don't doubt them. So if we are actually going to provide this much needed facility to the persons who need it, then we have to be careful in our messaging. I note that the areas where you indicated, or where it was indicated that the rent to own is still going on, is St. George, River Crescent, and Riverview, right? I'm not hearing anything in Christchurch, and a number of our colleagues are in the same position. So if the decision is that out of every new development, there is going to be some accommodation for the persons who require rent to own, that you're doing very good work. Let not misunderstandings color the work or the perception of the ministry. So I would happily work with you to get that message out there, because it helps me as well. So having led with that, I would like to know specifically, I know some work is going on in parish land, but I would like to know what developments are on the cards this year for Christchurch East, starting and finishing this year, or starting this year, or anything that's late to finish this year. So I just would like to have some idea, so that I have some idea how to direct people. Thank you.
Thank you again for the question, and I welcome your support in your ministry in terms of educating the public with respect to the rent to own program. And I'm certain that the managers and those within this chamber from National Housing Program will accept your offer to get the word out that the rent to own program is alive. Minister, member for Christchurch East, you have 2 housing programs within your constituency. Actually, there are 3. One is ongoing at Atlantic Breeze. Recently, NHC and all are with NHC, National Housing Corporation, their joint venture partnerships. One with HIS in Corvely, where they are building 36 low to medium houses. I will be honest that low-income houses, I will be honest to tell you that I cannot give you the cost per house as I sit here today, but I know that is on the infrastructural works. Right now, the first road will be finished, I believe, by the end of June, and thereafter, you'll see some houses going up in Corvally within your jurisdiction. Prices indeed will be worked out, and they will be offered, as I said, and JAS will be able to publish those like we have done at Brighton in St. George, like we have done at ADC, Wanstead, like we have done at some other, like Vesper Gardens. In addition, you have a housing product project at St. Bartholomew, where we're looking at building some low-income houses, where the old St. Bartholomew School was, and that's 42 houses. The start date for that, we're hoping in the second half of the year, around August. We intend to see some infrastructure works there, and thereafter, before the end of the financial year, some houses will be, I can't tell you at 50, but we like to gauge at 50 houses per year based on how construction goes in terms of the industrial process that we have farmed out within the ministry, not only at Hope, but also within the ministry. Because I can say to you that National Housing, through the joint venture program, there's some lessons to learn, and indeed Hope has industrialized the process with a view that these joint venture partners are looking at the way in which Hope has industrialized the process, and they're indeed taking it on with a view to have a minimum of 50, 60 houses built with the traditional methods, When we're looking at light gauge steel houses with autoclave concrete, which is the new innovative way. Well, this technology has been up for years, utilized in Australia, but is new to our Caribbean. This government saw it fit to bring it here in terms of another option. And we intend to have some show houses here, hopefully, before the end of the first quarter in this year, where persons can look at the light gauge steel structure with autoclave concrete. And we are hoping that some of those houses can go at St. Bartholomew. We are building houses, members in this chamber, opposition leader, at under $350 per square foot. We have come from building
1 minute to.
We have come from building houses over the years at $650 a square foot. And if we can sit here and say that our housing program has failed, then we have failed, because we do not understand that that is how you judge the efficiency of building. The time factor comes along in terms of the industrial process that we have created. But to say that we have failed and we have reduced the cost of building, we know a time when the cost at Valerie was $27 million at $651 per square foot. We know the cost at the Grotto, $24 million at $652 per square foot. And we have significantly reduced that through our industrialized process and proper management. So I am not going to sit here and allow anyone to say that this housing program is a failed housing program. We have significantly reduced the orphans to ordinary Barbadians. Where else in this world can you get a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house at $250,000 or $272,000? That is what Hope has done through Hope Ownership Providing Energy. And we await the introduction of the battery storage feed-in tariff through FTC, so that indeed we can allow the ordinary Barbadians. And through Joe Villa, the price of a house, a 3-bedroom house, a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom hardwood house coming out of Guyana is $154,000. And a 3-bedroom house and land. Where else can you find that? So we have indeed revolutionized the housing market, and there are good times on the horizon.
Yes, thank you, Minister. I will revolutionize your time now.
My last intervention. Look, I believe often we shoot ourselves in the foot, and one of the things that is causing great concern for people, and Minister, you know that this came up very recently, is where we have to relocate persons for public purpose, and the government has to do compulsory acquisition of land. The complaint quite often is, well, when we can get paid. I was speaking to some people recently who may have to be subject to acquisition of their property, and they brought up to me that they're not fundamentally opposed to moving and they understand why they might have to move. But the fact is other persons were moved for the same purpose many years ago and still have not gotten their money. So I'm just wondering, how do we plan to address that? What is in the cards for addressing that? I don't know how much is outstanding in relation to compulsory acquisition, but this is one of those ones that if we brought ourselves in line with what we're supposed to do and clean up the backlog, then we may not have the opposition when the government has to compulsory acquire something, because people need to feel that they are going to be compensated, they're going to be compensated fairly, and they're going to be compensated within a reasonable time. That's a question.
Yeah, thank you, member. Perhaps one of the most difficult questions for the morning. And why I'm saying difficult question, because compensation has been a major challenge to us in that when you acquire someone's land and you have a valuation from the Barbados Revenue Authority and the Land Tax Association, the Land Tax Department, but you converge in that their valuer values the land at a higher price than you, the government. And we find that there are many of those cases where there's the convergence of valuations and the landowner is not willing to accept the offer by us. But there are some cases where indeed there has been negligence years ago, and I am not going to say this administration, and I'm not going to call any administration, but this administration is seeking to address over, I think it is $300 million in compensation, and we have started that process. I think we have managed to pay over $100 million to at least 3 landowners, and it is work in progress. I know the file, I look at the file very often, and we're indeed trying to contact some landowners. Some of them we can't contact. So I will say to you, honorable member, it is work in progress. I'm going to allow the permanent secretary to speak further on it, because he is one who perused this act, and he knows this act probably better than some lawyers. I often refer to him as a bush lawyer. My permanent secretary, a very astute individual with over 40 years within the public service, as chief property manager most of those years. But this is a burning issue, and I know the Prime Minister has been, I wouldn't say it down our backs, but she has it at her fingertips every week asking, have you dented that compensation payment to individual landowners? And I can say we have over the last 3 years, but we need to do better. And indeed, this financial year, we spoke about, we have $6 or so million allocated for acquisitions. And I know some of that money will go towards compensation. And if we have to go back for a supplementary, we will. But I will hand over to my permanent secretary to speak on this, and if need be, the chief legal officer from the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. Over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Minister. I'm Nikki Smith, Ministry of Housing. The outstanding compensation is a matter that is being dealt with. However, the Ministry of Housing does a number of acquisitions, the majority of which are for roads. And we've therefore restarted our meetings with the MTW to make sure that we are on the same page when they're proposed to do a road development, so that we don't take up land without going through the process. In previous years, the entity requiring an acquisition had to provide the finances. That is not now the case, because it is now expected that the Ministry of Housing will ask for the funding for finances, for acquisitions, and that has caused a difficulty, because if we don't know before when MTW is going to require road works, we can't request the money at estimates, and we have to try to do a supplemental. We expect, though, that with the meetings that we're having with the MTW now, we will work in sync with them to make sure that persons are paid, persons are relocated, and therefore everyone will be satisfied, including the public purpose that we are taking the lands for.
Thank you, P.S. Smith.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. George North.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I wish to commend the Honourable Member for St. George South and the Minister of Housing for the work that he has been doing in the ministry. We have to be careful, though, about mixed signals, as we heard earlier from another Honourable Member. And I want to reiterate, for one, that the issue of rent to own is one of those where individuals go to the National Housing and they're told we do not have that program currently running. So in the minds of many, and certainly in the minds of my office in St. George North, that's the information received, and we communicate that to people. So I'm very happy to know that it's an active program and we can be in a position to be saying something different to constituents who come with that interest. Another area of mixed signaling, mixed signals was revealed earlier when the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest made a question about those tenants who have been renting for 20 years and so on. I noted with interest that in your responses, you never mentioned the Flat Rock rental units, where certainly that issue has come up as well, and where those tenants there have reached the 20-year mark and have been asking questions. And I wonder too if you would give clarification in your response as to whether St. George North and Flat Rock in particular is also in line for some good news. If you could mention whether this is government policy that your ministry is trying to follow through on, or if it is a legal requirement that you must turn over the houses at the 20-year. But that notwithstanding, I'm also asking, as I said, specifically for St. George North, and having you clarify again, because your legal department, I am told, conveys something different to people who have been going and seeking clarification on whether or not they should continue that monthly payment. So I'm just asking again for the avoidance of doubt, if in your response that issue can be addressed by the legal department through you.
Thank you, Member for St. George North, and you know, as my sister constituent, we have to look out for St. George. I'm not saying only St. George, we look out for the entire country, but it would be remiss of me to leave out my own. So I am going to allow the Chief Legal Officer from NHC to respond, because I know they receive many requests through the estates, and all communications with respect to ownership of these estates come through NHC's legal department. So Ms. Henrietta Bourne-Ford, I'll give you the opportunity to discuss Flat Rock among others, because this is a burning issue.
Thank you, Minister. In relation to the 20-year program, in terms of policy right now, there are 27 estates that have been designated to fall under that program. And Flat Rock is not one of them at this time. That is a policy decision, and that's all I could speak to specifically in relation to that. We expect that there's going to be some certain legislation that will be passed or submitted for review for determination to be made as to which specific estates would be under the legislation.
What I can add here, I commit member for St. George North to getting back to you in less than 48 hours on this matter, because I would admit that I don't know everything. I'm not one who will sit here and say that I know everything like some. I don't. And I will go deep into the trenches to review this matter. And I will also seek guidance from my AG. I know it is an SOE and government, it has a board. Of course, the chairman is here and we will have a discussion on it. And thereafter, I will expect that the board would make a wise decision in the interest of people. That's what we do, enfranchisement of people in this country, and that is what this ministry is about. So the door is not closed, and I will get back to you shortly, member for St. George North.
In the spirit of camaraderie, I will refrain from asking any other questions, and I will also refrain from any formulation in my mind that my predecessor in St. George North and a predecessor of yours in the Ministry of Housing has misled me. So I will await your response during the next 48 hours. I move on, therefore, to ask another question, Mr. Chairman, and it relates to the land at the glebe lands and in parish land, where title was expected to have been passed on to a number of expectant tenants who have been renting for some time, some in the case of parish land who have been relocated and so on. And I'm wondering what updates we can get for these residents.
Thank you, and we have an update, but I'm going to lead off because I know we had 2 years where members from St. George North spoke at our St. George Speaks on this matter of tenure with respect to the utilization of the Tenantries Freehold Purchasing Act, where this powerful piece of legislation allowed persons to acquire land or to own land at 10 cents a square foot, that is plantation tenantries, and the non-plantation tenantries at $2.50 per square foot, not below $300. And any difference, the government will pay the subsidy. If my memory recalls me well, and if it is the story to be told, the glebe was placed in the second schedule so that they can acquire the land at 10 cents per square foot under the diocesan trustees. This land is owned by the diocesan trustees, the Anglican Church, and there are some 128 tenants. 30 tenants would have purchased their lots previously, and during the period 2022 to 2023, the Ministry of Housing and Land surveyed 98 lots. And it is divided into sections, section A, B, C, F, D. But to date, only 29 persons have signed. 64 persons have started, and there are 28 persons to start. There are 28 to start. that will give you the numbers close to the 128. I think those that have gone before we came to office. But there are 121 more, not 121, because 29 out of that 121 have indeed received their title and signed the conveyances. So you have another 64 persons, which would be 92 persons waiting for their conveyances right now. 64 is in progress, and 28 yet to start. Now, the delays are many. The delays are due to attorneys, because I don't want to say out there to the public that attorneys don't make any big lot of money on this type of transaction. What I can say that there's so many transactions going on because there is a building boom. We, over the years, between 2018 and January 2025, we have transferred 1,124 individuals to landowners in this country across 143 tenantries. For me, this is one that I certainly have been monitoring. There have been delays by attorneys on the Diocesan trustees side up to this morning before I came here, and I think it was an active discussion on brass tacks, where someone from your constituency would have paid in money, and that matter should be closed within the next couple of weeks, I would say before the end of the financial year. But it has been a slow process as a result of, I would say, tardiness within the legal system, and it is no part of the individuals. Yes, those 29, but some individuals refuse to start the process. And we then have to encourage them to start the process, and that's about 28 individuals. The others, I'm hoping, and it is our wish to complete in this financial year, 2025-2026, so that those persons in the glebe, the 128, will be landowners, full landowners.
Well, you didn't, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do no report to His Honor the Speaker. Progress.
The question is that I do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, say aye. All members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that we do suspend this sitting for a period of 10 minutes.
The question is that this honourable chairman be suspended for 10 minutes. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chairman stands suspended for 10 minutes. This sitting is resumed. Prior to the suspension, this House was in Standing Finance Committee. We return to Standing Finance Committee.
This Honourable House is now in Standing Finance Committee. Honourable Member for St. George North.
Thank you, Chairman. And before the suspension of the sitting, and as a follow-up to the response that was given to my question, I wanted to ask the Honourable Minister. I heard him make mention of the fact that it is the attorneys that have been delaying the process, and I just wanted to clarify whether the attorneys included those from the National Housing, the Ministry of Housing. And this is relevant to the glebe lands.
Member for St. George North, I can assure you that the attorneys at the National Housing Corporation are very efficient. And if there's one section in the National Housing Corporation that I can put my neck on the block for, is the legal department. So I would say they're not holding up any aspect of land tenure at the glebe.
Well, I just thought I would ask it for clarification because I am sure that the other party, the Anglican Diocese, would not want to find themselves in any way wanting or caught in a web where they may be accused of what many constituents have been coming to me reporting, that they can't even get water because although they can show their receipts, they don't have title, so they can't go and get water run on their land. They can't go and get transfers from for light and power and different things done. They cannot do anything because they do not have title. And I just wanted to be sure that it was not the Ministry of Housing that could be encouraged in any way to speed up. I will have to make arrangements to speak to the Anglican Diocese again.
Let's hope that when we get to St. George gathering, this don't be a topic in the pulpit.
So, Chair, if I can move along to my final question. And my final question has to do with constituents or people, citizens of this country, who might have access to land, but who do not have the wherewithal to build on the land. There are many people who will come and say that land has been passed down to them and they have the evidence and so on, but they cannot afford to build on the land. And they question how the National Housing might be able to help them. Some of them are those who renovations or repairs were committed to under the ELSA program. And that's how I phrased it, the ELSA program, the house repairs that should have followed that. Some of them are included there where they have land. There's no issue with anybody challenging for land and so on, but they have not been started as yet. Have not heard anything from the ministry. And some of them are people who would want, for whom in the constituency, for instance, we know that we have National Housing land available and who are in dire need of relocation from where they are currently and where there are those house spots, we can have them transitioned if the Ministry of Housing has a program where once land is available, it can assist in the housing. So I would wish to hear the minister comment on this.
First, Mr. Chair, if you permit me to go back to parish land, because I don't think I did justice to you earlier. So I just wanted to go back to parish land. Yeah, thank you. At parish land St. George, there are approximately 110 tenants residing there. The landowner is deceased and has indicated that the land should be made available for those persons deemed to be underprivileged. That word is a word I don't like to use, but the Ministry of Housing and Land has assumed responsibility for the tenantry at Parish Land. And in the current role as the agent for the landowner, we have been collecting rent from those tenants, those 109 tenants. And we will want to enfranchise the tenants in accordance with the wishes of the landowner. And this has been prevented from doing so due to the lack of a clear title. So how do we get that clear title? We will utilize the Land Acquisition Act, Section 5, Cap 228, and the chief surveyor will be required to provide confirmed description and bordering plans to facilitate this. Let me add also that a social survey was done at Parish Land by the Housing Planning Unit, and that was done last year. It started on November, and up to date, the information previously collected is information from way back in March 2020. And once we utilize the Land Acquisition Act, then we will indeed begin to give persons title. I expect this will not be dragged out like the glebe lands. So I expect within a short time frame, my good PS is on the left. If we can get that Land Acquisition Act paper, then we can start this process very, very soon in this financial year. And we intend to conclude this process where we have those 109 persons. One of the members who sits in this chamber grew up on one of those lots. And he's very proud to let people know he's from humble origins, a member for St. Joseph. And there's no excuse now, there's no apology to make. But his parents are one of those 109 tenants. And he wouldn't be upset with me if I mentioned that. Listening to how he eulogized his mother, I think he'll be proud to know that someone who's less fortunate than him would acquire that land. And indeed, it will stay within the marshals. All right, so we intend to, in the financial year 2025, 2026, to have that addressed. So 109 plus 128. Member for St. George North, you therefore to have over 230 tenants that will own land. And this translates to over 500 people who will be indeed housed or have the opportunity to be housed. The other question you posed, I'm going to give the General Manager the opportunity, General Manager of National
Honourable
Corporation.
Member, you know you took your time to answer the former question.
Well,
your time will now be limited.
Mr. Chair, but the former question...
Yes, you went back. We don't go back. You go forward.
But the question was not answered, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member,
Humble and
you had the
respectfully,
opportunity to answer the question. How you answer would have been your decision.
Humble and respectful to the Chair, sir.
Chair, please don't disadvantage me for his error.
Honourable Member for St. George, you all have to, St. George North, you have to be cognizant of the time, and you also have to be cognizant of the fact that there are other honourable members who wish to contribute on the behalf of their constituents as well. Thank you. Honourable Member, you have 1 minute to attempt to answer the question, and during the course of your dialogue for the remainder of the sitting, you can address pieces of it, but I'm not giving you that 5-minute time that you normally would get to answer a question.
Thank you, Chair. Over to the General Manager of National Housing Corporation with respect to those persons who have land and who are looking to have, houses built on it, and those who are within the 2,500 bracket. I guess that's what the member has been looking at. So I'll give the General Manager of National Housing the opportunity to answer that.
Good afternoon, Ian Gill, General Manager, National Housing Corporation. In respect of using of private lands, the National Housing Corporation has started a project, and it's a pilot project. We have actually constructed one house that is, and we have 8 persons who have come into the planning and design section of the National Housing Corporation and have stated to us that they do require to have a housing solution. With that in mind, the process has started with the planners and so on to make sure we can send the information to the planning and development section where we will be able to provide those persons with houses, whether they be Juravilla or of their own design. So we are intending to move that pilot project to another phase where we'll be able to do it significantly across the country.
Member, Mr. Chair, you know, can I or don't I? Can I or don't I? Can I?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. The focus of this government, the objective, whether you own land or you don't own a land, the aim is to enfranchise every single Barbadian as it relates to owning their own home. There are persons we recognize, member for St. George North, there are some who cannot afford to pay. And one of the projects that this government is looking into, the vacant lot project, where we want to embrace, and it is a very good idea, to embrace persons who own land. They can utilize that as the equity into the project. We build the houses on the land. This is an idea. Let me say it's an idea. And we build the houses on the land. They have the equity because they have the land. And we build the houses on the land, and indeed, we begin to allow them to utilize that equity. So after that equity has been utilized in the land, then they begin to pay something, or they begin to pay something towards the ownership of the house. And we recognize that the land cost may converge to the cost of the house. So the payment for those persons may not be that much, right? So we are looking at those type of projects, and that came about as a result of the vacant lot, derelict and vacant lot project that we're looking at. Because there may be some persons who started a house, left the house, they can't afford to finish the house, but they want to join, you know, with us and utilize what they have done as equity in the house. And we finish the house, and then we would rent the house, and then, you know, whether rent or sell the house to someone who's willing to sell, or if they want to buy back the house, we will own it until indeed they have paid us, and then we can hand back the house to them. That too is part of one of the initiatives, and we intend to roll out that in the year 2025, 2026. A lot is happening in the Ministry of Housing, a lot, all with a view to enfranchise the ordinary Barbadian.
Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, Honourable Minister, first of all, I want to thank you for the job you're doing in the ministry. I know that the Ministry of Housing is probably as difficult as it is important. And I think the fact that you came to office and found a waiting list, even though you've cleaned it and it may be less, of about 25,000 persons or so, tells us that the Ministry of Housing, through the years, have had difficulty providing housing to the number of persons who would have applied over time. So I want to commend you for the job that you're doing. I know, for example, in my constituency, I have in Bayville 85 units, 51 of which are eligible for the 20-year transfer, 15 of which were sold and none conveyed. And I'm sure my constituents would like to discuss this, though that may not be my question, but if you wish to speak to that, I'd be happy. My first question is on the grotto and those houses in Bayville. And this should really be a tale of two different cities, but in many ways it is not. The Bayville housing area is very old, as you know, very, very old, one of the oldest. And the residents who live in those units have a number of complaints. I have written to the Ministry of Housing or the National Housing Corporation several times, and with all due respect to the current general manager, he has responded, but yet my problems remain and persist. So, for example, I have leaking roofs, leaking walls, faulty toilets, I mean, you name it. And those units, because they're so old, you have situations where people share a yard. And like the old housing units in the Pine, where you share a yard, and that's a recipe for problems. And I suspect at some point there's going to be a need about serious work to be done in Bayville, because those units need too much work for repairs, and I suspect at some point people have to become transferred or something done in those units. That's the first half of my first question. But the same thing exists in the Grotto, which was built much, one would say, more recent. But we have the same problems. Again, I've written several times about the Grotto. Leaky faucets, walls, tiles, an alarm that goes off incessantly. A number of issues that I've written, and we have had meetings in the Grotto, Minister, as you know. Thank you for coming, and the residents appreciated your coming. But there's still some problems that persist. So what comfort, Minister, can I offer my constituents in both the Grotto and Bayville? But as the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest had asked, really, what is the maintenance problem? Because there obviously is a problem with maintenance. And when I come back for my follow-up question, Minister, you know that I feel very passionately about these housing schemes for obvious reasons. But something has to be done to improve the service given to the people who reside in these housing schemes. And so my question is specifically on maintenance of those schemes.
Member for St. Michael South, you're someone that I move around with a lot. And yes, I've been there with you more than once. And certainly I too have expressed my dissatisfaction with the level of maintenance. You know, I hate to say this, but what I did for a living in a former life, I was a maintenance manager. And if there's one thing that I can bring to National Housing Corporation, or should have brought, is the whole aspect of preventative maintenance and how it should be executed. It is one of the weaknesses within National Housing Corporation. It has been recognized, and the repurposed National Housing Corporation have sought this year, and we've reorganized the maintenance department, whereby the focus will be on technology with a view to allow the depots to communicate with the main office. Before, everything was done on a manual basis. In addition to that, National Housing has created a call center. I don't know if that's the right word, whereby persons can now call in and log their complaints, and indeed in a digital format, it is rolled over to the maintenance department. Before, this never happened. So we have changed the way we do maintenance, and indeed there's been a focus. The chief maintenance officer, I will allow him to speak, because while he's not new to the corporation, he has assumed this role within the last year, and he has reorganized with a view to utilize technology within our depots to allow faster action, to allow us to manage our inventory better, because critical to maintenance is the management of inventory. Someone wants a window, and you know you can't see within the system that you don't have windows. Then you have to go to buy the window. It takes at least 4 weeks to get the window, 5 weeks to get the window. Sometimes they forget that they need to
install a window. And while I'm not here, we're not here to, because we have excellent staff at National Housing Corporation, there are weaknesses. And we found that maintenance is indeed a weakness. The response time has been poor. The response time has been poor. And the member for St. Michael Southeast, she goes through similar, experience to what I am going through. We need to beef up national housing at a supervisory level, whereby persons within the maintenance department recognize at a supervisory level, because you have some excellent workers, but at a supervisory level, if you don't take that preventative maintenance program now that we have indeed started to put together and address and response time. I just told the member for St. George North, I'm responding to her within 48 hours. We are creating a culture at National Housing that you have to respond to tenants within 48 hours. Some will say 24 when we get it up and running. 24 hours will be our KPI for response time. But with the introduction of the call center member for St. Michael South, and with the introduction of a preventative maintenance plan that they never had, we will see progress. Tremendous progress. I sympathize with you, sir. Yes, I've called the Chief Maintenance Officer, Mr. William Clark, to speak on preventative maintenance and what he has done since coming to the fore.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon. William Clark, Chief Estates Officer, National Housing Corporation. So, Minister, you're quite right. There has been quite a number of issues relating to maintenance in the department. The matter of the high-rise buildings, the grotto is one that we do have some challenges with. But in recent times, we've carried out stock condition surveys on those buildings, and we've come across a number of issues that we are currently dealing with. We've just put in place a team to work on both Valerie and the grotto. Extensive work has been done at Valerie. Thus far at the grotto, the issues which relates to the roof and which relates to the leaking, those are currently being dealt with. We've also put a team in place to work on the backlog that is currently existing. We're using new technology now. We've moved away from the old manual way we used to do things, and we have seen some improvements. In fact, we have a number of tenants from the grotto who would call as well to say they've appreciated the way that we've started to do things, and we are seeing some progress. The problems relating to the high-rise buildings is nothing new. The thing is, we have to find ways of dealing with them in a way that will satisfy the customers. The issues highlighted at Valerie, for example, where we have leaking roofs that affects the ceilings. We are currently replacing all those ceilings, removing the tentes, and we're replacing them with PVC materials that in the event that the plumbing, which is a problem, continues to give us any issue, we can remove the PVC and replace them with, and replace the plumbing pipes, and then return the PVC in place. So we're doing quite a lot. Yes, we need to do more. We need to improve what we're doing, but we're moving in the right direction to see that things are improved and get better.
Speak to Bearville.
Officer, I know that it's apparent that we didn't get your name. So just repeat it for the records of the House for Hansard.
William Clark, Chief Estates Officer, National Housing Corporation. The matter at Bearville, we are currently working on doing assessments there. The officers have been providing those reports, and as soon as we complete those, we're going to start work in that area.
Thank you, Chair. This is a follow-up question.
Thank you, Honourable Member. We will come back to you. We just want to break at this time. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I beg to move that you do not report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. All members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:45 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2:45 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2:45 p.m.